Un saludo cordial a todos y todas. Les damos la bienvenida a esta jornada de Spondylus para conversar con nuestra invitada, la doctora Shilpa Samplonius, que ha venido dentro del contexto del evento internacional académico entre la Universidad Andina Simón Bolívar y el ESI, el European Scientific Institute, una institución que realiza formación postdoctoral que están compartiendo con la Universidad Andina en esta ocasión. Sin más, pues realizaremos la entrevista con la doctora Samplonius en inglés y posteriormente esta será traducida. Hello, Dr. Shilpa, how are you doing? It's really a pleasure to be with you here in our university to have this conversation about your interesting topic of research. By the way, to introduce all of you, Dr. Shilpa Samplonius is a PhD, is a doctor in international economics by the Universiteit van Groningen, University of Groningen in the Netherlands, and she's now conducting his postdoctoral studies about a theoretical perspective from her empirical work developed during her PhD. In this context, we can perhaps start with the first question. Tell us what is your topic of interest, your topic of research, and briefly share with us about it.
Well, thank you, Dr. Alexis, for giving me this opportunity. I'm very glad that you asked this question. In the world, that we have basically 190 countries which are member of United Nations. Out of this, 164 are members of World Trade Organization. And these countries are basically committed for the free trade. That means every country which is a member of WTO basically opens up its boundaries for the world trade. WTO also facilitates many facilities. For example, Ecuador would like to export its bananas, let us say, to the EU, and then EU doesn't allow it for one or the other reason. In that case, Ecuador can go to the WTO and ask for consultation and say that why don't we get access, what are the reasons for that. In that case, if the complaint is considered as valid, there will be a panel established, and after that there will be a verdict. And what is found out, that all those countries which are basically developing countries are not basically giving enough attention to the protectionism by the developed countries like the USA, like the EU and Australia, for example. And it is this issue, why is it like that? Why these developing countries are not able to express their concerns about the access to the market in the developed countries? That is basically my research.
Very interesting topic, very crucial for the so-called underdeveloped countries, and as well these important relations established in terms of trade. You quickly mentioned Ecuador, and I would like to stress on that case as an example. How you perceive these relations of free trade in the current situation of Ecuador and let's say the big poles like China is the greatest market, United States, which is the most important market that attracts the exports from Ecuador, or even the European Union, where you live now since 23 years ago in the Netherlands. How you see all those perspectives on your research?
That is a very interesting question. Ecuador has basically already initiated a complaint back in 1996 against European Union for the distribution and sales of bananas in the EU. After that, they have also initiated another complaint about the shrimps. So European Union is not new to Ecuador as a complaint taker. So they have been basically complaining, and one of the most famous case is about bananas, that not only from Ecuador but some other Andean countries and the USA, they launched a joint complaint against the European Union. And instead of taking 14 months, which is the official procedure time, it has taken several more than a decade before they could get justice. And nowadays you could see also Ecuadorian bananas also in the EU.
You mentioned that the official time for that can be surpassed according to not precisely legal terms, but let's say according to particular dispositions from the developing countries mostly that not favor the underdeveloped countries that are trying to, let's say, appeal some decisions. Is it like that?
The thing is that if everything goes according to the procedure, the WTO should not take more than 16 months to get trade justice. However, in reality, we see completely different picture. It may take sometimes even more years before a panel is formed. And definitely in this very sensitive case, which was a joint complaint, it took really more than a decade before they could get any justice. And first you have a panel phase, and if you do not like panel phase, then you go to appellate body. And in this banana case, it did happen that way. They did go to appellate body. However, appellate body basically was in favor of panel ruling. So they said that there was nothing that panel did wrong or gave any wrong verdict.
Mm-hmm. Like, is it possible to say about your main results that you can find both in your PhD research and also in the current postdoc, that you are developing an interesting paper focusing theoretically the empirical results of your PhD. What are the conclusions, the main conclusions in the terms of this dialogue that you can tell us?
The most important thing here is that all the countries are basically just like people like you and me. And just like you and me, the more income we have, better, the more and luxurious things we can afford. And in this context, international economic law is showing the signs of being a normal good. That means richer the country, better access it has to these services of international economic law. So that is what it crudely states. And it shows that even if people make their own laws, still one or the other ways, the international politics get reflected also in the judicial system.
We can say that is not fair, judiciary system?
That
is like biased?
Fair. That is definitely not fair, because trade is supposed to bring the prosperity to all. That is the main aim of free trade, transparent trade, for the benefit of all the people in the world, irrespective of their income, irrespective of their religion, irrespective of where they stay. And if that is something what we want to achieve, then this kind of tendency that we see based on empirical evidence is definitely not supporting the main objective of the WTO.
Very interesting conclusions. Political issues directly involved in all those processes rather than economy as, let's say, as a nature or so. And could you please tell us about something that you can share with our audience about the main topics you want to stress or underline?
What is most important is that developing countries should make use of those facilities, and developing countries should really stand for their rights, as they should have the same power, same equal access, just as developed countries. And the services of the WTO are expensive, but I think together they can stand, and together they can fight to have access in developed world.
Is it possible then to the development of development countries association, such as the European did? The origins of European Union is this economic, political, and processes to enforce one to each other. you think that a similar process, let's say in South America or in African countries, can provide better conditions on such trade?
That's definitely that. United we strong. We are more strong, of course, and at the same time, WTO also should have some more changes, because the way they have formulated their international economic system is something not very accessible at this moment. And at this moment, because of this appellate body, there is a blockage by the USA. There needs to be something to be done, and it's time to go for more different and a new system of world trade system rather than what we have at this moment. Because what we have at this moment is definitely far too biased towards richer nations.
Mm-hmm. Thank you very much, Dr. Shilpa, for this interesting interview. And we keep on having you with us during this week, as well as other colleagues from different countries that are visiting our university. And I appreciate this time for this interview.
Thank you, Dr. Alexis. It's my pleasure. Thank you for having me. Have a nice day.
Muchas gracias, amigos y amigas, por haber escuchado esta entrevista para Spondylus con la doctora Shilpa Samplonius Raut, docente de la NHL Stenden en Holanda, en los Países Bajos. Un saludo cordial para todos y todas.